Today on Eye on Northwest Politics, Portland's homeless crisis out of control. So what's actually being done by Portland City Council to solve this seemingly never-ending problem?
We've tolerated the intolerable, and that creates division.
I speak one-on-one with City Commissioner Dan Ryan, who leads the Housing Bureau, to get answers on what's being done and when. Plus, campaigning like it's 1998. Bill SIZEMORE, Oregon's Republican candidate for governor 24 years ago, is re-emerging as a candidate in 2022. Why he says now is the right time to re-enter the political arena more than 2 decades after his first gubernatorial run. And speaking of Oregon's governor's race,
this race alone is going to be a blast.
The packed field of some 30 candidates is drawing serious attention from political experts. Why editor-in-chief of the Portland Tribune, Dana Haynes, says this race is the most interesting in a generation. Eye on Northwest Politics starts right now. Thanks for joining us. This is Eye on Northwest Politics. I'm Ken Bawdy. Our political headline this week: the Oregon Supreme Court has ruled that Nicholas Kristof is not eligible to run for governor of Oregon. The state's high court confirmed the decision by Secretary of State Shemia Fagan. The court and Secretary Fagan said Kristof did not meet residency requirements. By state law, a candidate needs to have lived in the state for 3 years leading up to the election. Kristof voted in New York State in 2020. He says he will not challenge the court's decision. We've heard about safe rest villages in Portland to get hundreds of homeless people off the streets. 6 were promised, 3 potential sites are chosen, so when will they open? Portland City Commissioner Dan Ryan is in charge of that project as the commissioner who oversees the Housing Bureau and the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Commissioner Ryan also running for re-election this year. Commissioner Dan Ryan, welcome to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Hello, Ken. It's good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's get right into it. What is the status of the safe rest villages right now?
Ken, before I dive into that, and I promise we will dive into that, can we have a moment to just set the stage for what we're experiencing right now in the city of Portland when it comes to houselessness? I think too often we don't take a breath to talk about the fact that people are experiencing houselessness in our city at a much higher rate than ever before. Everyone knows that. But there's also, you could interview 100 houseless people and have 100 different stories. But for simplification, let me just do this. There are those people on our streets that are houseless, with the main factors being poverty and the fact that our housing prices are to live in Portland is so expensive. And many of those have other factors, but just safe to say that that's a big part of the houseless population. And the Housing First strategy with services is going to be successful for many of those people. There's another population in the city of Portland that we don't talk about enough, and yet that's what everyone's experiencing in our streets when it comes to feeling, if they're not feeling safe. Just talk to anyone that lives and works in Old Town. Talk to anyone that lives out in Lentz where they don't feel comfortable accessing their sidewalks and their parks. We have people living in our city at a much higher rate than ever before that are in very late stage addiction. They choose their addiction over anything else. And Portland, unfortunately, is like an open air drug market because it's very important to set that stage. So thank you for allowing me to do that.
Well, I appreciate I appreciate you defining the scope of the problem. And we know that safe rest villages are just one piece of this puzzle. Let's take a look at the map of the 3 locations that have been chosen. One on Nadeau Parkway, not too far from Coin Tower here. There's 122nd and East Burnside, and the Sears Armory parking lot on Southwest Multnomah Boulevard. So what is the status of those, and when are people going to be actually able to move into them?
Yeah, so it was very important that we built these on-ramps from streets to some stability where we could actually bring services to people on the ground. And so the 3 that you just had on the map are the ones that we're moving forward with pretty rapidly. And we're excited. In fact, out at Multnomah Village just about a week and a half ago, the neighborhood association approved by a vote of 73 to 21, I think it was. My point is 3/4 of the people in the audience at Multnomah Village voted in support of moving forward for a good neighbor agreement. I think the media did a lot of coverage on how that would not be the final vote from that neighborhood association. So I'm happy to say that when we have a chance to make the case and build relationship with the neighborhoods, Portlanders want action, they want solutions, they're tired of hearing and admiring the problem. And so I'm delighted to inform you of that. We also should be moving the village, the camp that was built in emergency over on Water Avenue over to Southwest Nato Parkway, probably in April. And then we're looking really good out at Menlo Park with our partner in TriMet, and Cultivate Initiatives will be the provider there. And so we're making a lot of headway. We've worked on good neighbor agreements that have provided a bigger buffer zone. And that's both for the people who live in the neighborhood, but also for the people who are going to be in the villages, because we want people to receive the mental health and behavioral health services. We want them to start to get sober one day at a time. And we don't want them coming out of the village environment, which is restorative, and then be triggered by people who are using these hard drugs on our streets with not a lot of accountability.
Well, the camp that you're moving to the Nato Parkway location, does that mean that we need another Safe Rest Village to be established in order to take the place of that one, since you're just moving one camp from one place to another?
Well, when you get to the aggregate, we're going to definitely be providing more services. Our office was tasked with transforming the emergency shelters that came up right at the beginning of COVID. You probably know of them. There are two at Water Avenue. There is one in Old Town, and they were built for a temporary COVID response, and they're not getting very good results. And so we are transforming them into the restorative setting, just like the villages will have. So in fact, they will become a part of the village work that we're doing. And I think when all is said and done, you'll have those three, plus we'll have, we'll probably get to a number more like 8 when all is said and done.
I'm still looking for a timeline here. You said July maybe for one of them.
And I think the timeline is something that, as you know, I'm ambitious. I came into this job just 16 months ago, and I came from the private sector where we really had to be results focused, or you just wouldn't be able to make your payroll. And so I'm used to things moving a little bit faster. I will say that we're moving at a fast pace. We have a team that was built just 6 months ago. We started this journey. And we will be having all of these open sometime in 2022 and hopefully much sooner. But my point is we're dealing with headwinds that I think everyone that's tried to do work with the city and the county has experienced. And I am doing my best working with a great team to get these up and running, and also just bringing the neighbors along so they're not just accepting these reluctantly, but they become a part of the village atmosphere, become our best volunteers, become a part of the welcoming team. So Portland needs to be a part of this process. And so I'm glad that I was ambitious. I will always be ambitious about goal setting. And I look forward to our culture changing enough so when you set out such goals, they'll actually move much quicker in the future.
Well, as I said earlier, this is just one piece of the puzzle, the Safe Rest Villages. We've got, at last count, some 4,000 people on the streets. How many will be housed once these Safe Rest Villages are up and running?
I didn't sketch that out, but I'd say what's more important than that is like saying there's 200 at a time. But the fact is it's at a time. So this isn't a final destination where someone will live. This is an opportunity to do a thorough assessment. We're asking each provider to measure how one's doing in their resilience so they'll be successful when they move into housing. They estimate anywhere from 6 to 9 months. And it looks at behavioral health and mental health assessment. It looks at workforce and education engagement and ready to go to work again. And then it looks at how they do living in the village. When all of those metrics show some positive gains, then we know that when they move into permanent housing, they'll be successful and they'll be back in the workforce. And Ken, I really hope that someday many of those people will be those who are working with the houseless on our streets. They'll be some of our best employees.
I want to get to this. Mayor Ted Wheeler's Director of Strategic Innovations, former Mayor Sam Adams, released a memo last week calling for a drastic approach to the city's homeless crisis. Let's take a look at this. He suggested 3 mega shelters that would hold a total of 3,000 people, staffed by National Guard and social work students from PSU, among others. It hasn't even reached the status of a proposal yet, but it did convey a sense of a crisis that needs to be dealt with immediately. What did you think of that idea and that memo coming out of the mayor's office?
Well, first of all, I knew it'd be popular with many people because I mentioned that earlier. We're tolerating the intolerable in our city right now, and that creates a big division. So people want quick action. And they want something that sometimes is a silver bullet that probably would never be able to be implemented. I haven't met one person that works with houseless, that works with people who have mental health and behavioral health issues that says this is a good idea. And so I'd rather stay focused on reality, Ken, and make sure that we get these up and running, but we do look at thinking out of the box. So I love that part of it. And I do think that especially when we look at those who are on our streets that are choosing addiction and their drug habit, and they'll do robbery and sexual crimes to just even exist on our streets, is not okay. And so we have to get into dialogue and action around what does mandatory treatment look like. We cannot continue to tolerate the behaviors that we have on our streets that are making it it's just inexcusable, and it's not fair for those that feel trapped in their homes and they can't even access their sidewalks and their parks. So yes, I'm all for doing as quick as possible how to get the unsanctioned camping off our streets so that Portlanders can enjoy them again. Everyone who pays their taxes then looks at the infrastructure of the city going down and the county going down, and it's not okay. So as a person that's been in office for 16 months, who has a dotted line over to the county runs all of our houseless services, Ken. And I think I've been by far the first elected official in a long time that it's been challenging the status quo, that waiting for housing first and housing only is not going to get it done. But we need to bring alternative shelters to the ground, do assessments on where people are at. Just this past 2 months, one of our villages that we've transformed from the emergency shelter has housed 15 people from that shelter. And so that's already an example where once we have people building relationships on the ground, we can make better decisions to move them along. We have a very broken system on the ground, and it's a very big leap to go from that to suddenly being in an apartment by yourself.
I understand. Commissioner Dan Ryan, we do have to go. We could talk to you about this for much longer, but I appreciate you taking the time to join me on Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thank you, Ken. I'm going to keep fighting, and I hope Portlanders will fight along with me. Thanks.
Next, he was the Republican nominee for Oregon governor in 1998. Now, more than 20 years later, he's back in the political ring. Why Bill Sizemore says now is the right time for him to run for governor again.